After many, many weeks, we are finally down to the final game of the college football season. I remember it was just like yesterday that it was week one and we were previewing our matchups and who we thought might have been there in the end. And I'll tell you what, at least one of these two teams we did not think was going to be there. We're going to preview the national championship game. And also, college football has released the Hall of Fame class this year. And of course, it does come with a little bit of controversy, and there are some big names on that list. So we are going to talk just about that. I'm your host, Mathew, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host, Mathew Raridan. With me today, we've got David Street.
Football.
And we've got Ed Smith.
Hook 'em, y'all.
Well, guys, I mean, it's sad to say this, but we are down to the final game, the national championship game. Like I said, we didn't quite predict these teams fully getting there, at least the beginning of the season. One of these teams, we had a good, chance that they were going to be there, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And yeah, it's sad that the college football season is coming to an end, but it really isn't. Although games are going to be over with, college football is year round. I think we can now say that it is established that college football is a year-round sport, whether games are being played or not. There's always something happening. I can guarantee you this, that after this game's over with, we are probably expected to see a lot of big news coming out of college football. So stay tuned for that. But today's episode, we're definitely going to talk about this national championship game and preview and kind of go over by the numbers and then how we're feeling that this game's going to kind of play out. Let's go ahead and dive into the betting numbers here, guys, because sports betting's a big thing. Some may say it's kind of what controls sports. Las Vegas and the sports books, they're usually right on top of things. And this game, we are seeing clearly who the favorite is in this game. And let's go over first half here, because right now this is according to DraftKings. And yes, odds are subject to change as the game is still a couple days away, which will be taking place on Monday the 20th. In the first half, they have Ohio State controlling the first half. It looks like they are minus 250 favorites to take that lead going into halftime, as the over-under for the first half is set at 22 and a half. I definitely take the under here, Ed. I feel like these teams kind of have to establish themselves a little bit. Ohio State, which we did see against Tennessee and Oregon, they did jump out pretty fast, but against your Longhorns, that did change a little bit. What do you see here against Notre Dame that supports the under at 22 and a half?
Actually, I see it supporting the over because the way Texas plays coverage against a speedy group, a talented group like Ohio State, they were able to umbrella the entire offense to where it was very difficult for those wide receivers to get loose and create those big plays like they did against Oregon, who was running man against uh, Jeremiah Smith and Igbuka and Tate and that whole fleet of receivers that Ohio State has. Well, guess what coverage Notre Dame runs primarily? That's the one high safety, man in the sky with man across the board. I think there's a chance that Ohio State will take advantage of that and try and jump out to an early lead so they can shrink the back end of the game. But really try and jump out and discourage Notre Dame from becoming competitive in this championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. So it almost seems as if maybe Vegas isn't really on to something since they do have the under. Um, Actually, sorry, my apologies. They have the over being hit. That I did read that wrong. So the over at 22.5 does is pretty well supported. David, uh, do you think this game's going to be won in the first half, or do you think it's something that's going to be won in the second half?
Well, I think if we're looking at how, like, when you look at how Ohio State started in the first half against Oregon, it's going to be like the entire game is going to be, won in the first half if Ohio State gets off to a fast start like that again. But as for this game overall, I think this is a game that will be more won in the second half. Speaking as someone who really does not know much about gambling, sports betting whatsoever, despite the fact that sports betting has been legal in my state for the past year, right? Over and under 2.5. So it seems like Vegas is thinking that Ohio State is going to have a 14-10 lead, um, in the first half, which, I could see that happening. I don't see either team running away with it at first. I think whoever's going to win, and we'll obviously reveal our picks later, I think whoever is going to win is going to win it in the second half when the other team is worn out and tired.
Well, yeah, and it's if it's any indication, I mean, they Vegas has Ohio State being a 9.5 point favorite in this game, but they also have them not only taking the first half, but the second half here also. But the interesting thing is that I think they feel that things are going, the gas pedal may be taken, off a little bit in the second half as they have the under at 23.5. And that is where the money is going as of right now in the second half. So we may see some more exciting things in the first half versus the second half. But these are two top defenses here, but I think when it comes to this college football playoff and the national championship game, it's almost like a clean slate. Anything can happen, but some interesting prop bets to put out there. If you are a gambler, if this is, you're going to be watching this game, you have some money in this game. These are some interesting numbers here because you got both teams to score 10 plus points. That's at a minus 650. Yes. So that seems to be a pretty clear and obvious choice there, followed by both teams to score 15 plus points at a minus 160 for yes. So you start seeing the numbers do tend to shrink there because once it gets to both teams to score 20 or more points, it actually favors the no at a minus 210 odds there. So Vegas is thinking that these teams are going to be at right around the 15 to 20 point range each, which would support the over and under at where we're at now. So I don't know if anything really jumps out there to you guys, but uh, I think they really do feel like things are going to kind of start out a little quick for these teams and then kind of phase off in the second half due to, I mean, it's fatigue. I mean, these teams have played a lot. Neither had a first round bye, and now they are both in the national championship games. But Ed, I have to ask you, the college players aren't used to this many games. How much is fatigue going to be a factor?
Well, the given the time frame and rest that they've gotten between the second round to the third round and third round to the championship game, they've had time to rest. But you're right, 16 games uh, for both of these teams is a lot. And that can show up, but this is why they go through the preparation that they've gone through since last March. Uh, so that's why college football is a year round thing because now we are anticipating to win a national championship, you have to be a team that can withstand going through a 16 game schedule to make it as far as your goal set out there for. I will say that I believe that Vegas has this reminding me of Rocky Four in a way, because they're anticipating Ohio State to be the Ivan Drago of it all. Just come in and just destroy you and not let you get up. But everybody loves the underdog of Notre Dame, just fighting through it and almost rooting for Notre Dame against Ohio State, which I don't know many people that actually like Ohio State, uh, just because of the Ohio State, that arrogance that is associated with the program. So, uh, that being said, Vegas is certainly anticipating the Ivan Drago effect, but I think the people really want the Rocky Four effect of this game.
David, one of the storylines going into this game is both these quarterbacks are products of the transfer portal and in their first year at their new programs. How big is this for the transfer portal to players, not just quarterbacks, but players, that you have a big opportunity now to be able to join a national title contender team? And who would have thought that these two quarterbacks would have been the quarterbacks that made it this year?
Well, I think it's absolutely huge because, listen, at the end of the day, you still need to be able to recruit out of high school well, but the transfer portal is definitely taking over the game. And I think one of the most clear cases of the transfer portal winning out was when we saw LSU win it all in 2019 when they were led by Joe Burrow. Now, that team had a lot of stacked homegrown Louisiana talent, but Joe Burrow was the one who just he was the finishing touch. He was the last piece of the puzzle that LSU needed, right? And you're looking at two quarterbacks who, at their previous stops, it didn't work out. But the grass is sometimes greener on the other side, as we're seeing the case here with Will Howard and with Riley Leonard.
Yeah, and Ed, I know that we all, play to get to something greater, which in their case is the NFL. But Will Howard and Riley Leonard are now fighting for a national championship, but they aren't going to be high draft picks. But then you look at two quarterbacks such as Shador Sanders and Cam Ward, who have transferred, are probably going to be the two first quarterbacks off the board. So it's like, what's better in that case?
Well, it depends on the player's priority.
Yeah.
Is the priority to go and win, or is the priority to go and showcase your skills to then go on to the next level? And with these two quarterbacks, I I think they truly know that their ceiling is high level college football. It isn't in the NFL. So what are you going to do? You are going to take the skills that you have accumulated in your years at your previous stop, whether it be uh, Duke or Kansas State in this case, and then move it on to a higher program that gives you the opportunity to win at the highest level, at the level of football that you are going to peak at. They understand that they are not NFL prospects. They understand that their best is in the college game. So go and make the best of that college game by going to a program that gives you this opportunity, because that's the other factor of the transfer portal is you can work your way up through the system at stop by stop by stop until you get to a level that is giving you an opportunity like these guys are seeing here.
Yeah, and you really do love to see it because the transfer portal. I think we're all in agreement here. We love the transfer portal. They do need to fine tune some things, such as dates and deadlines, blah blah blah. But you look at this last year's draft: Caleb Williams, number one, transfer portal product, and then Jaden Daniels, transfer portal product, and now going to be rookie of the year. So it's like it does have so many pros to it because it does better your career, your draft stock, and for these guys such as Will Howard and Riley Leonard, a chance to play in the national title game. David?
I do want to point out, and I agree, and I get your point overall, Matthew. But it should be noted that there was a pretty clear difference in the reason why Caleb Williams transferred and why Jaden Daniels transferred. Caleb Williams transferred simply because Lincoln Riley transferred.
Yeah.
That's it. Whereas Jaden Daniels, it just wasn't a fit at ASU, and so that's why he went to LSU. But I do get your overall point.
Yeah, no, definitely. So he transfer portal product asterisk for Caleb Williams, but nonetheless, still is a transfer portal quarterback. So
Mhm.
there are many pros to the transfer portal, and both these quarterbacks can attest to it. As one of them, at the end of the day, on the 20th, will have national championship quarterback on their resume. So, but let's talk about individually these teams here, because I talked about Will Howard leading this Ohio State team, who has two running backs with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Junkins. And then, of course, we've talked about their wide receiver core. And that's one thing about Ohio State, David, is they seem to always have a pretty solid wide receiver core. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, year after year after year, they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and by golly, I'm drawing a blank on other big receivers that they've had, but
Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean,
yes,
there's a
yes,
lot that
thank
come
you.
out of this
And
program.
Michael Thomas. Remember
Yeah.
Michael Thomas? Fairly sure he played for Ohio State as well.
Yeah.
And Olave, yeah,
Chris
I'm remembering
Olave.
everybody now.
Yeah.
I go back all the way to Ted Ginn
Ted
Jr.
Ginn.
and Santonio Holmes. So
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
they've continuously produced wide receiver. They've produced many NFL talents at Ohio State. I will give them that. As much as we may not like them, they do produce a lot of NFL talent. Wide receiver position is just insane, almost like LSU. Look at the two top receivers in NFL this year.
yeah,
LSU products. So
yep.
it's it. Each program can be known for something. We've always heard the DBU. We've heard it all, but this Ohio State team is very, very talented. I see what you mean, Ed. Is very, very talented on all levels, offensively and defensively. And I am going to talk about defensively here in a bit, actually, for both these programs. But if you guys were to make a prediction, I'm making winners right now. We're going to talk about Ohio State. At the end of the game, who would be Ohio State's MVP right now? Ed, I'll start with you.
I think the mop or most outstanding player, as they put it, it's got to be Jeremiah Smith. He's got to get rolling early and often, and that just opens up the offense for everybody else. He
Agreed.
is he is the playmaker on this field. There's nobody else that is at that level of talent, that has reached their talent this early in their life. Because remember, he's only 17 years old.
Yeah.
So it's got to be Jeremiah Smith, and everybody else is just going to feed off of what he can do.
Agreed, Jeremiah Smith. And then also, I do want to point out how when I look at these two teams, to me, they're very similar to each other in certain ways, but they're also very different from each other in certain ways, right? Like for one, you look at how they've just look at their scoring margins, almost nearly identical, right? But they're different, and this is kind of a prelude to what we'll be talking about, in just a few minutes. But obviously we're implying that Ohio State has a strength in the passing and receiving game. Well, for Notre Dame, it's the complete opposite. So, whereas their strength is more on the running game. So, it's kind of fascinating here to see two offenses where their strength relies on two totally different aspects of the game. For Ohio State, it's passing slash receiving, and for Notre Dame, it's running.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the two different identities here. For me, it's going to be a player that I will personally say will be the most outstanding player, but no one else will, and that's going to be drawing a blank on his first name, but Ransom on defense for Ohio State. If you
Jack
guys,
Sawyer.
no, Ransom's his last name. I think it's like
Oh,
Lathan
okay.
Ransom or whatever. I drawn a blank on his first name, but if you watch this guy play, he reminds me of like Palomalu. He's in every play. He's involved in every play. He's kind of like a flex between like a safety and linebacker. I urge you to watch him because he's a playmaker. Most of their defense is, and of course we'll hear Caleb Downs, Caleb Downs, Caleb Downs. But I urge you to watch Lathan Ransom on defense because this guy is legit as a defender.
Hold up a second. Not that I'm disregarding what you just said, but isn't there a most outstanding player for both offense and defense? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
there probably is, but what I'm saying is, who's the one player that we think is going to be that guy, that
Okay.
playmaker that they're going to talk about at the end of the game if this team wins.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, so that's why I was choosing him for mine. But Jeremiah Smith is a pretty obvious pick because the guy just balls. I mean, he did it against Texas. There you go, Ed. But he for the most part, the guy just balls.
We bracketed him pretty well. He was not at the forefront of the Ohio State offense, and that's just the way that we play defense.
Yeah,
I think he had only it was either only 2 targets or 2 receptions
yeah,
or whatever the number was. He
yeah.
did not have a big impact in that
Yeah,
game.
3 yards, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, and we all saw the viral picture of Texas's scheme against them, where they had what 3 or 4 players pretty much lined up against them because, I
Cover
mean,
six on that side of the field. That's
yeah,
all you need.
yeah,
The Calvin Johnson treatment.
yeah, yeah. That is legit true right there. So, let's go ahead and go to the other side, and we're going to talk about Notre Dame fighting Irish here, who may not look flashy when you hear some of the names or look at some of the stats, but they are still statistically putting up some of these same numbers as Ohio State, and they are in the national championship game for a reason, and that is part of Riley Leonard and his play. We talked about the passing game, just like David alluded. Riley Leonard is he could pass the ball, but he's also a running threat. Overall, this Notre Dame team does know how to run the ball with whether it's Riley Leonard or their running back Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love has been banged up, and fortunately, they are here in the national championship game, but they need him to be healthy in this game. I really believe they do to try to take off as much of the load as they can on Riley Leonard because Riley Leonard will try to play Superman. He will try to run the ball, throw the ball if it's just him out there, and more power to him. The guy's a stud. The guy knows how to play ball as well. But this needs to be a team effort, I think, in this game if they really want to win. So, David, I know it's pretty self-explanatory, but what would Notre Dame's key to victory be to win this game?
Are you just looking for on offense, defense, or
Uh,
anything?
anything. I mean, what do you think Notre Dame needs to do to win this game?
Well, I think one big key for Notre Dame would be their third down defense. For as good as the Buckeyes offense has been, especially as of late, their third down defense, or excuse me, third down offense still isn't the greatest. They're just 50th, I think. Whereas Notre Dame, I believe, is third or fourth against third downs. So if Notre Dame is able to stop Ohio State on those key third downs, I think that could help them. That could help them in the game.
Yeah, people don't realize how big third downs are on all levels college football, NFL. That is one stat that needs to really be looked at the most because it is key, it is vital to either get off the field from a third down stop or to continue your drive on a third down conversion. It is very big across the boards on all level, and that could be a deciding factor in this game is if Ohio State can convert or if Notre Dame could stop them and get their guys off the field. So that's a very big. Ed, was there something you wanted to say to further?
Well, on for one player on both sides of the ball for Notre Dame, on defense, Xavier Watts. He's got to show up huge, and I'm thinking multiple interceptions
Yeah.
for Notre Dame to stay in this game because Notre Dame's plan, what it appears to be, is yes, they know Ohio State's going to score points, but just stay in arm's length. don't let it get out of hand, because situationally, Marcus Freeman is a better coach than Ryan Day in situations. So I think that is what they're hoping to do. But on offense, Jeremiah Love has to hit some home runs. He cannot be a 2 yards in a cloud of dust type of running back, because that's what Riley Leonard's going to do. And who has the number one opponent red zone scoring defense in the country? It's Ohio State. So they're not going to be able to just pile it in there, a yard and a half at a time and make it all the way through the red zone, because that is where Ohio State gets really good on defense, when that field shrinks and they can be more aggressive in that area.
Yeah, and if you haven't really noticed, I haven't brought up that these two teams played last year. Uh, they are being led by different quarterbacks. There's a lot of different playmakers that were in the game last year that aren't in this game, but the one thing that does stay a constant rolling over is Ohio State has some of the most experienced defense in all of college football. So they are bringing that over from last year, that they do have a lot of the same guys on defense that have seen Marcus Freeman, that have personally seen how he coaches. And that was a, tooth and nail fighting for the victory at the very last play last year that Ohio State did squeak out the win. I didn't really bring that up because it is a little different this year, because different starting quarterbacks, different receivers. There's going to be a lot of things that are different versus last year.
Let me
Yeah,
ask you.
and Caleb Downs, I think, is maybe the only starting defender for Ohio State that isn't eligible for the draft this year.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have a lot of 5th and 6th year seniors on their team.
yeah, Caleb Downs is a true sophomore, I think. But let me ask you guys something. So we've talked about where these teams' offensive strengths lie, right? For Ohio State, it's passing. For Notre Dame, it's rushing. So Ohio State's strength isn't passing. Notre Dame is, I think, third. Yeah, Notre Dame is third against the pass, right? Notre Dame's strength in offense is running. Ohio State is third against the run. So Notre Dame is great at defense against the one thing in offense that Ohio State is best at. And then for Ohio State, it's the opposite. I'm kind of going back and forth, but I think you guys get my point. All that being said, who do you trust more? Do you trust Notre Dame's run defense more against, or excuse me, Notre Dame's pass defense more against Ohio State's passing offense, or do you trust Ohio State's rushing defense more against Notre Dame's rushing offense? Ed, you go first.
I will trust Notre Dame's pass defense more than Ohio State's rush defense, simply because Marcus Freeman is a defensive coach. And even though the philosophy on this team is to be man across the board, he's going to have some wrinkles that will be more of a pass off man scheme rather than just a straight up man scheme across the board. So I would definitely take the experience of Marcus Freeman, knowing how to game plan against a more talented wide receiver core than what his DBs can cover, more so than I would trust Ohio State's defensive line to be able to stop more talented running backs than they can stop.
Mathew, what about you? Who do you trust more? Ohio State's defense against Notre Dame's rushing offense, or I'm talking. I'm having trouble speaking here, but I think you get my point.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go opposite than Ed, only because of experience. Because I'm gonna have to trust Ohio State's rush defense more. That's because Oregon was, I want to say, top 5 rushing offense in all of college football this year, and our highest rusher against Ohio State had 14 yards. That was it against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So it was embarrassing because Oregon couldn't run against them. Uh, a lot of teams haven't been able to really run against them as of late. So I'm just going to have to go with that because I did see that. 14 yards rushing from our number one running back against Ohio State definitely seems, kind of sketch. So I'm going to have to go with Ohio State's rushing defense to stop and make the plays.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Based upon that, if I could,
Yeah.
uh, Matthew, when your team is down 4 touchdowns in the first quarter and a half, I mean, you kind of give up on the run anyway. So I'm not sure if that's truly a fair comparison, but I get your point. But I think that the example that you're giving was circumstantial.
Yeah, I mean, even if that's just one quarter or even a one half, the fact of the matter, those were the only yards that were brought uh, from a top five rushing offense is still kind of worrisome. And I know Notre Dame's a little bit different because they do have a quarterback who is second on their team in rushing. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think with like your point as well, Ed, is like you said, Xavier Watts would have to make a couple interceptions, I think, to really kind of change the game a little bit. And I agree with that because if he doesn't, Ohio State is going to continue to throw. If he does have multiple interceptions or Notre Dame does, I think they're going to slow down and start running the ball some more. But I think that needs to happen. And if that doesn't, then that's why I'm going to take Ohio State's rushing defense to be the bigger factor.
Yeah, all in all, I agree with you, Matthew. I would trust Ohio State's rushing defense against Notre Dame's rushing offense, more so than the other stuff. And for the simple reason being that a lot of times defense is predicated on strength and athleticism, sometimes more so than on offense, in my opinion. And so, just all that to say is that Ohio State just simply has better athletes. And I think, especially when it comes to a strength versus strength kind of situation, I would trust Ohio State more than Notre Dame.
Uh, Before we get to predictions, is there any numbers that maybe stand out to you, Ed, stylistically between these two teams that you may want to talk about, whether it's special teams or anything like that? Just thought I'd give you the floor on that opportunity.
Well, last week we had talked a little bit about Notre Dame's kicking game being a liability more so than a strength. We're talking ranked 127th in college football at a 58% make rate. I Notre Dame is going to need every point that they can get. And Marcus Freeman, being a defensive minded coach, tends to make play calls and do the things that old school coaches did and accumulate points. Don't keep going for the knockout punch. Just accumulate points, and eventually you'll get as many points as you need to win. So that the Notre Dame special teams is where I think this game could be won or lost for Notre Dame.
Hey, Ed, who talked about Notre Dame's kicking having potential heroics against Penn State? I can't remember who it was, but it
Who
was
was that
Hey,
long.
what do
guy?
you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw your text message multiple times.
Yeah, for me, this may not be a full on numbers thing. This is more of a kind of outside looking in. Is Ohio State, if they are to win this game, they may not be looked at as one of the greatest teams to ever win, but if you look at their run, starting with Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame, what do those four teams have in common is Tennessee probably has a top 15 defense. Oregon was top 10 in defense. Texas was top 5, if not top 3 in defense. And Notre Dame is also top 5, if not top 3 in defense, which is truly amazing if the big if Ohio State does win this national championship game. just how great really is that when you look at that to be able to beat 4 teams in a row and all of them have top 15, top 5 defenses.
Well, I hate to be Buzz Killington here, but not only would Ohio State not be one of the greatest teams of all time, not even close, they wouldn't even be one of the best redemption stories of all time. I mean, certainly not like their 2014 version when they were down through their third string quarterback. Now that's a redemption story right there. Okay, you lost 2 games, and whoopee, you finally got your crap together with your $20 million roster. Okay, so if you win it all, congrats, you'll deserve it. But no, you're not one of the best teams of all time, not even one of the greatest stories of all time, in my opinion.
However, they may not be one of the greatest champions of all time, but they will be the most accepted college champion of all time. Because going through this 12-team playoff, that is way more clout than going through like Florida State being left out last year or any of the BCS stuff where teams were not given an opportunity because of the formula only came down to 2 teams. So having to go through this gauntlet of an actual playoff format, not just a semifinal and final, I think this would make whoever wins this, whether it be Ohio State or Notre Dame, the most accepted college national champion that we've ever had.
I'll give
As
that to you.
someone will still say Notre Dame doesn't deserve it. They're not in a conference. But
Considering how much money that they're going to get for each round that they've
yeah.
won, their NIL is ridiculous right now.
Well, they essentially fleeced college football because of the financial rewards they've gotten by not being on a conference, because that usually has to be spread, that wealth within the conference. They don't have to because they're not part of a conference. So they definitely did finesse the system there. But yeah, this was if Ohio State wins, almost a best case scenario because they were a 2-loss team that did just make it, and they won all those games to get them there. So if that does happen, that still is incredible, especially against those defenses. But yeah, they definitely aren't going to be a most talked about historical team who won, but nonetheless, they did still go through a gauntlet to win it all. So, guys, let's go ahead and let's drop our predictions here for the college football national title game. I'll go ahead and start here. I think early on it could be close. I think at the first quarter, I'm going to give pretty close there, but I think from that point on, it's going to be Ohio State's game. As much as I'd like to see Notre Dame win, that was my grandfather's team. He was Notre Dame through and through, and I'd love to see them win. But I just feel like Ohio State's going to be the better team here. I just don't think it's going to be close. I think that talent-wise is going to be really unmatched. I'm going to go Ohio State winning this 31-14. Ed.
I think this is going to be a game that is closer than the final score uh, comes out to. It's going to look a lot worse when Ohio State wins 31-17. I think it'll be a very similar to what the Texas game was against Ohio State, where it was a score game and then something happens and all of a sudden Ohio State's 2 touchdowns ahead and game is over. So I think that's where we find ourselves with with this game. So that's my prediction. Ohio State is going to be our national champion, and they'll probably win by 2 touchdowns.
I'm going to take Ohio State 34-23. They've got the better athletes. They've got the more expensive roster, and they're playing with a chip on their shoulders. So give me the nuts.
I mean, in the end, does Marcus Freeman win no matter what? Either his alma mater wins or
Well, I
he
tell you
wins.
what, and I mentioned it before, but if Notre Dame wins it all, LSU fans, especially the ones that were crapping all over Notre Dame fans, when Brian Kelly left, they're never going to hear the end of it.
No, and this actually kind of creates a perfect segue here, Ed. Uh, we've heard some names being floated around in the NFL of head coaching jobs. One name that I have seen talked about is Marcus Freeman. I think Marcus Freeman can be one of the greatest coaches if he stays in college football. I think he's a phenomenal head coach, and I think that he could do some great things. But it seems like the NFL believes he could do great things at the NFL level. If Marcus Freeman wins or loses, could we see him leave at all, or you think he's Notre Dame for now?
I think he's the next version of Lou Holtz. I think he's a Notre Dame lifer at this point because he is the culture of Notre Dame football.
He'll just
So
need to develop a lisp soon.
and then go be behind DJ.
It could be done. Yeah,
But when we're talking about coaches that seem to be like good fits for the NFL, ones that progress and build cultures and programs, and then want to test their stout in the next level, I'll give you two words: Nick Saban. He went to the NFL, did okay, not great, but then came back to college and became one of the best coaches in all of college football history. So that is one I would give you, but there is another two words I would give you. Matt Rule. Matt Rule, a program builder, somebody that can coach young men, and he goes to the NFL and just falls flat on his face. Realizes that he should be back in college, so he came back to Nebraska. Those two examples just right there are the reason why Marcus Freeman should not be leaving Notre Dame to go to the NFL. You're not going to find a better job in the NFL than what you have.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree there. I think Marcus Freeman should stay at the college level, and I think Notre Dame needs to kind of throw him a nice lucrative deal to make sure he stays there for life. But I think he does want to stay there. I really do, and I think a national championship win would help him, to stay there. It just kind of gives him that motivation to continue to do that, keep turning that program, and make them national title contenders each year. Now, on the flip side, I'll give you a name here that's almost the opposite. I mean, well, we'll see. One of the all-time greats at head coaching in the NFL is now in college, and that is Bill Belichick. And this is a very interesting story for those who don't know. He is now the head coach for Notre Dame. Dot dot dot. Is he?
UNC, UNC.
Sorry, I said my bad. North Carolina, North Carolina. But is he really? Because reports have came out that he hasn't officially signed his deal. David, have we found this to be true?
To be honest with you, Matthew, I didn't even know about it until you just brought it up.
Yeah,
That's how up to date I am.
Well,
it's
okay, so the skinny of it is, Bill Belichick, he has agreed to be the head coach of North Carolina, but there's a buyout if he wants to go back to the NFL. Well, here we are with Black Monday, where all the NFL coaches get fired. There's a lot of speculation on where Bill Belichick could wind up in an NFL coaching job when he's already committed to go to North Carolina. So the question becomes, Bill Belichick not signing the tender offer for North Carolina's football program, does that make that buyout even a thing? Can he just walk and go to the NFL without ever setting foot on a North Carolina sideline, or does he stick by his word and coach at North Carolina and just develop players there? That's the real question. Are we sure? Do we really know which way it's going to lean? I mean, David, which would you do in that situation?
Well, I tell you what, I would never sign with UNC with a buyout, because to me, a buyout just indicates that you were never even sure in the first place. If I'm in that position, I want to make sure that I know I'm making the right decision and that I am fully committed. A buyout just means that he was never really sure in the first place, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, is there anything legally binding to this? Because yeah, that buyout would kind of be null and void if there's nothing legally binding. Because if he hasn't signed that tender, but has he received payment? I mean, there are several different things that could possibly legally bind him to that. But it just seems weird that how has he not signed that tender yet? And I mean, I know after the news came out, his girlfriend, of all things, what is she in high school? She's over here posting pictures that they are committed to North Carolina. Here's us posing for a picture of North Carolina gear. We're committed, but it's like I don't really know what's going on there. But I know Bill Belichick. One thing he wants to set up that future for his son Steve Belichick, because one of the rumors in the contract is that once he's done, Steve takes over the program.
Mm.
So I feel like Bill would have to do that. He would have to kind of go through with it and be North Carolina's head coach. He's already made some hirings. I saw two veteran coaches on the staff. So I would think that he's committed, right? Wouldn't you think, Ed?
I do think that, and I think there's a window that coaches sign their contracts after the official end of the college football season from 1 year before getting started in the calendar of the following year. The problem with that idea becomes the transfer portal is never ending. You need to
Yeah.
be set at your position at all times if you are going to get those recruits that you know your program needs to come to campus.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be more on top of it for that because it's the never ending circle at this point. So another big name college coach that we're hearing in the news right now is Deion Sanders. Uh, of course, we've seen, is he going to go to Dallas? And the big question is, should he stay in Boulder? Should he stay there at Colorado, where he said he's committed to? But what do we know when it comes to head coaches and players and their word? It means absolutely nothing when money talks. So ultimately, eh, David, should Dion stay there in Boulder or should he go up to the NFL?
Well, you know what's interesting, guys? Because initially, before, I would have said yes, he absolutely should stay in Boulder. But the more I thought about it, I've changed my mind. And now I'm going to say that no, I don't think he should stay in Boulder. Because one, his son Shador isn't going to be there anymore. Also, we all know that Colorado is not the end goal for Dion, and I think Colorado fans, I think at least the diehard ones, not the bandwagon jumpers, I think they all knew that this was going to be a short-term thing for Dion, and really Colorado. The only way that Colorado is going to get a guy there, who's there for the long run, is either an alum or someone who's from that area, and that's just not Deion Sanders. And Deion has been treating Colorado like a professional business, with the way that he's been running things there. Basically treating the transfer portal like free agency, and free agency, the NFL, and listen, I think Deion would be a horrible fit for Dallas. But I tell you what, guys, one team that I think should strongly consider him, and it's actually very obvious when you think about it. And that team is the Jacksonville Jaguars. For one, the Jags don't have a head coach anymore because they fired Doug Peterson, right? And also, Dion is a Florida guy. And listen, the Dolphins aren't going to fire McDaniel, and the Bucks we're not going to fire Todd Bowles. The Jags have a vacancy at head coach, and like I said, Dion is a Florida guy. So I'm not saying they should hire him, but they should take a good look at him. All that being said, long story short, initially I thought that Dion should stay, but the more I think about it, I think he should go because Shador's not going to be there anymore, and he treats Colorado like a professional business with the way that he operates. Ed, what do you think?
Uh, I'm on the exact opposite side of this because I've got a few reasons. One, Deion Sanders did not become a head coach through the ranks of being an offensive or a defensive guy. He just showed up and became a head coach as kind of a figurehead of a program, but he wound up having success. And that success came upon his ability to speak to young people, to motivate them, and to get them to do the things that were necessary to win. And you don't necessarily just become a head coach in the head coaching ranks. You become a head coach because of one side of the ball or the other. The other part is I take your point about the Jacksonville Jaguars, but is any owner of an NFL franchise going to straight give the keys to Deion Sanders, of all people, to run their franchise and let him come and go as they pleases? I don't think so. That is not something that an owner that is treating their football team as a business is going to let a guy just come and go as he pleases so he can be in commercials with Nick Saban or uh, have all these star-studded gatherings with all of his famous buddies and all this other stuff. I don't think that's the case. At least in Colorado, that is his town at this point. They have the city of Boulder, Colorado has absolutely given Deion Sanders the key and are counting the money uh, because of it. They can't count fast enough how much money is coming into Boulder, Colorado because Deion Sanders is there. So they're willing to put up with all of Deion's stuff outside of just the football program. Now, as far as recruiting is concerned, in college football, you can get the players that you want. In NFL, you get the players that you are told that you can have. And that is something that I don't think would work well with Deion Sanders moving up to the next level.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, in the sports world, we knew that if a Florida State job opened up or a Dallas Cowboys job opened up, that those would be the two main kind of programs that he may go to because those are the teams that he played for. And I would stay away from Dallas honestly at this point. I really would. And he made a promise and a commitment to Colorado that I think he needs to be a man of his word and stay there. So I think he should stay in Colorado. I think he needs to, learn more as a head coach and as a head coach without Shedeur Sanders, without Travis Hunter, to really see what he's made of. So I think that he should stay there. So we're going to see, though. We're going to see what happens probably within the next week, really what happens. Lastly, I want to go over, since we're on college football, the Hall of Fame class has been announced, and I'll run through really quick the recent inductions and the class of 25. We'll start with Monte Ball, Greg Carr, Blake Elliott, Greg Esslinger, Terry Hanratty, Graham Harrell, John Henderson, Michael Huff, Jim Kleinsasser, Alex Mack, Terrence Metcalf, Haloti Nada, Steve Slayton, Darren Smith, Michael Strahan, Dennis Thurman, Michael Vick, and Ryan Yarborough. So those are all the players that are inducted in the 2025 class. And then coaches, we've got Larry Blakeney, Larry Corver, Urban Meyer, and Nick Saban. So as I go over that list, there are a lot of big names on there, whether it be players or coaches. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban being probably the biggest names on there. But there was one name that we did not see on there that is, kind of a controversy, and that is Mike Leach not being on that list. Mike Leach. Mike Leach is known for many things. He's a phenomenal guy. I'm going to start with that first. Mike Leach is a great guy. He has passed away, and I know the college football world does miss him, but it's more than that than why he needs to be on that list. Unfortunately, he fails to make it because of the win percentage for coaches. But he's right there, Ed. He is just one game away from achieving that win percentage. And it's more than just his record on why he should be on that list. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Well, when it comes to uh, what a single person has meant to the game of college football and how it has uh, evolved over the past 25 years, I don't know if you can tell me another single person that changed the game of football within 25 years the way that Mike Leach had. Now, granted, uh, with Coach Royal and the wishbone offense, that completely changed the game in the 60s, and that moved all the way through the 80s. Well, this spread offense style, this innovation that Mike Leach created coming up through the ranks, uh, that is something that is being felt at all levels of football, not just college. It is being taught at Pee Wee. It is being taught at 7-7, at flag, at high school, and college, and those same concepts are being expanded upon in the NFL. So there is no question, just innovatively, that Mike Leach should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Damn the record, because it really would only take one more win because the percentage for a coach to get into the College Football Hall of Fame is 600. He is at 594, and that one win would put him over at 601, I believe. So just on that alone, let alone the other things that Mike Leach is known for, and that's his coaching tree. That's his the out and out popularity. We still see clips of interviews that he did on the sideline in press conferences for 25 years and still can't get enough of it. We've all watched the Pac 12 mascot rant, uh, of which mascot would actually survive if they all went into a pit together. So that was great. The Halloween candy one, uh, there's still candy innovation that's out there. Uh, there's that one, as well as coffee's terrible. You need to get rid of it one sip at a time. I mean, just the way that he had a way of communicating things was just beyond uh, anything that anybody had seen. He was a walking soundbite. It was so great, and his popularity could not be higher and respected in and out of the world of college football. Now, if you want to talk players that he coached that went on to be known at the highest level of college football, you're talking Tim Couch. You're talking Josh Heupel, the current coach of Tennessee. Tim Couch, who was the number one pick for the Cleveland Browns when they were reinstated into the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury, the current offensive coordinator for Washington Redskins, not Commanders. Graham Harrell, who is the current offensive coordinator for Purdue. And Mathew said it earlier. Graham Harrell is getting inducted into this class, uh, and Mike Leach isn't. That is a travesty. B.J. Simon, who came in after Graham Harrell, outdid Graham Harrell's numbers. Gardner Minshew, who played this year uh, with the Las Vegas Raiders, just up and down. He had Wes Welker in his program. I mean, just so many players that you can point to, so much innovation, so much popularity that he brought to the world of college football. There is no chance that this committee does not make an exception for Mike Leach to be inducted into this hall. And if they don't, then that is a complete travesty, and it's not worth the paper that it's printed on.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Ed. Here's what I'll say, okay? If Mike Leach was a guy who just simply won a lot of games but really had no impact on the game whatsoever, a la Les Miles, I would probably say yeah, he shouldn't be in. But Mike Leach literally changed the way the offenses go with his air raid concept. You cannot look at the way that Coach Leach has completely impacted the game of college football and be like, nah, sorry, he had to get one more win. That is complete BS. Again, as I say, if he just simply won a lot of games but had really no impact, I would probably say, nah, he shouldn't be in. But it's the fact that he was one game off and completely impacted college football that makes most, if not all of us, believe that he absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, I know this is going to sound kind of dramatic, but like there may not have been a Patrick Mahomes. I know he did not coach him. I want to make that clear. But the legacy and what he did, the innovation he did for college football and Texas Tech, the influence there, they may not even been a Patrick Mahomes without Mike Leach. Just want to put that out there. I know it sounds dramatic, but it is true. And yeah, he touched he did a lot for all of his players, for the college community, that he should be here on that list. But unfortunately,
And
he is not.
and you know what? It seems to me like there needs to be changes to the rules. There should there should be something called a Mike Leach rule, whereas you can be eligible if you didn't get to 600, but you had a very obvious positive impact, then you can get in.
Yeah,
Well,
and Leach is also a guy that the University of Texas Tech, or Texas Tech University, however you want to call it, they still run the same offense
they
that
do.
Mike Leach installed in there 25 years ago, well beyond the years that he had left and gone to Washington State and then to Mississippi State.
Yeah.
That program is identified by the tenure of Mike Leach being in that program. Very much like Notre Dame is identified by the tenure of Newt Rockne or Lou Holtz. Very much like Texas is identified by the tenure of Darrell Royal or Mac Brown. So I don't, I just cannot understand why they did not put Mike Leach in this class, because if they don't, they have no class.
And last point I'll make on this, and different Hall of Fames, but they're both Hall of Fames nonetheless. If Mel freaking Kiper, as we all remember, people talk about Mel Kiper possibly getting the Hall of Fame for the NFL. The same guy who said that we should ban two high safeties. If Mel Kiper gets in a Hall of Fame before Mike Leach does, then fellas, we riot peacefully.
Peace. Yeah,
Peace.
definitely. Um, well, two of the more premier coaches that did make the Hall of Fame this year, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. I kind of want to do a side by side comparison. I'll go ahead and start with Nick Saban's number, and rightfully so. David, I'll have you kind of go over Urban Meyer's numbers here. Nick Saban was in college football 28 years. He bolstered a 297 to 71 and 1 record, which is an 806 win percentage at major schools. Which he had 31 bowl games, which he went 19 and 12. Seven, I'm gonna repeat that, 7 national championships. Three national championship losses, so you got those losses there. Two-time Camp Coach of the Year, two-time Robinson Coach of the Year, two-time AP Coach of the Year, two-time Bear Bryant Coach of the Year, and five-time SEC Coach of the Year. If there's a award to give out, Nick Saban most likely won it. I'm just going to put that out there. He has left a legacy in college football just with all that he's done with the victorious programs he's had, mainly at Alabama. David, you want to go over Urban Meyer's numbers?
Sure. So Urban Meyer coached college football for nearly 20 years, 17 years to be exact, and he had an 854 win percentage. In 15 bowl games, he was 12 and 3, which gives him a 800 win percentage. He won 3 national championships, 2 of those with Florida, 2006 and 2008. And then 6 years later, he won it with Ohio State in 2014. He was the 2001 MAC Coach of the Year, a 2 time Mountain West Coach of the Year, and 2004 Robinson Coach of the Year. And listen, even though Urban Meyer coached my Gators, and there's not going to be any bias for me. Both phenomenal coaches, but Nick Saban is obviously the better coach. And just one particular reason I will give is that in their primes, Nick Saban never had an off year. Y'all remember 2010 when Urban Meyer had his so-called heart issue, right? And he bolted Gainesville to go to Columbus to coach the Buck. Again, in their primes, Saban never had any off years. He was always on, always on. Whereas Meyer was just like, I'm having some medical issues here. But what I really mean is that I'm tired of y'all folks in Gainesville, so I'm getting the hell up on out of here.
Well, Matthew, let me ask you this: if Urban Meyer didn't have the health issues that he had actually run into, the true health issues that he had, and stayed as a head coach for as long as Nick Saban, would we be having the conversation of which one's better? Would Urban Meyer clearly be above Nick Saban by that point?
I actually believe so. I really do, because if he stayed at Ohio State, let's just say he stayed there, we know how many times Ryan Day's fumbled games just with him being there. I don't think Urban Meyer would have. Ohio State, just like Alabama, is constantly flooded with talent. And I really think that if he were to have stayed at Ohio State specifically, I think that he, at the end of the day, could have been close to 6 or 7 national championships.
I hear what you guys are saying. I still think I would still take Saban as the better coach because you have to consider the state of the programs they looked at. Now, I know it's kind of even laughable to think about, but people forget Alabama was kind of a dumpster fire when Saban took over. Like they were just mired in constant mediocrity under who was it? Don Shula, Dan
Mike
Shula,
Shula.
Mike
Mike
Shula.
Shula. Don
Thank you, Mike.
Shula's son.
Yes, yes. Now, granted, Ohio State did have one down year before Urban Meyer took over, but that was just like one little blip in an otherwise dominating era for Ohio State. Alabama was, for a certain period of time, nobody took Alabama seriously, and Coach Saban brought them back to prominence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
after Gene Stallings left, uh, Alabama really became a halfway house of what it used to be. And then Nick Saban, after his time in Miami, coming back to Alabama, did resurrect the giant.
Yeah, no, it really did. And I mean, I do agree with you, David, that it's clearly Nick Saban, because Nick Saban, he was such a great head coach that he knew how to adjust. And I always say great head coaches know how to adjust in the game, and he did that better than anyone. So he has to be the best.
And let's not forget, Ed, to add to your point about resurrecting a giant, let's not forget that Saban also resurrected another sleeping giant in LSU.
LSU.
Before Saban got there, LSU really wasn't worth anything for the longest time. And Saban completely changed the program.
Yep,
Very
he's
true.
yeah, he's had his hand on both. So now let's really quick head over to players. I'm gonna start with you, Ed, actually, because I know me and David are gonna pick the same guy, so we'll have quite a conversation there. But Ed, who is your favorite player in this class?
Well, I mean, it's fairly obvious. I have to go with my guy, Michael Huff, because when you're talking about playing uh, a safety at DBU, which is what Texas is known for, uh, you're talking about a guy that won a national championship and was an All American here, won the Jim Thorpe Award for Best Defensive Back. And we're talking a defensive backfield that had Michael Griffin, we had Cedric Griffin, we had Aaron Ross, We had Aaron Harris at linebacker. This is a guy that was basically quarterbacking the secondary and and I'm still going to say the best college football game of all time, which is the 2006 national championship game between Texas and USC. And Michael Huff was the guy that uh, was a leader in that locker room and on that defense that was able to just finally get us over the hump of being a really good team to being the great team that everybody knows. Yes, everybody talks about Vince Young in that season, and deservedly so, but that defense was nasty, especially on the back end. Nobody could do anything against them. So I'm going to take Michael Huff in this, and I just shout out to DBU, University of Texas.
Yeah, and I know it seemed like for me it'd be obvious picking Haloti Nada, going to Oregon and all, but for me, I love the highlights at all levels sports. Just like Anchorman too. Let's play the things that people want to see, and you're talking about highlights, home runs, whammy. Okay, and for me, I look at that list, and that's Monte Ball. David, I'll let you kind of take the floor here because I know for you it's Monte Ball as well. But what stood out to you, and why, is he your favorite player on this list?
Well, it's funny because, to be honest, I almost completely forgot about Monte Ball's college career until I saw his name on the list. But it's all coming back to me, and I just remember, watching him in real time or via the highlights, like you mentioned, and just seeing how much he put defenders on ankles. Just seeing him burst through defenses like it was absolutely nothing. And Matthew, I'll let you elaborate on this, but what made Monte Ball special was that he was really the guy who kind of jump started that era for running backs at the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because right after him, you got Melvin Gordon. Uh, Melvin Gordon, we know the numbers and the career he put up as a Badger, and then on to the NFL, and then Jonathan Taylor too. So, I mean, there's been phenomenal running backs that have come out of there, but there was a nice stretch there where it went from Monte Ball, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor there at Wisconsin, and that was impressive. But I think to me, what stood out the most, especially with Monte Ball, is this is a guy who tied Barry Sanders' record for 39 touchdowns in one season. That's almost unheard of. And Barry Sanders, we know how many records he set at the collegiate and NFL level, but uh, Monte Ball was a stud. And this is at a time where running backs were putting up video game like numbers left and right. LaMichael James, Trent Richardson, and I want to say David, was it Samaje Perine? Or no, that was Melvin Gordon's time. But still, running backs were just running rampant during this time, and Monte Ball was a stud. So he was one of my favorite players to watch at that time.
I do want to say as well, one Hall of Famer, college football Hall of Famer, that sticks out to me. Not really because of his college game, because he was around before I even existed, but Michael Strahan. And I think one thing about Michael Strahan, about his professional game, well, not even just his professional game, but it was something that he said on the sidelines when his Giants were up against the at the time 18-0 New England Patriots as major underdogs. And like every year the NFL releases films on who won the Super Bowl, and Strahan kind of, I wouldn't exactly say he shot a shot, but there was one point when he said 17-14 is going to be the final score, fellas. Okay, 17-14 is going to be the final score, and at the time that seemed really bold because this was still the Patriots we were talking about. This was Tom Brady and Randy Moss, like someone, a team that could score on you at will. And even if they were having slow moments, you knew to never count them out. So it's the fact that Strahan was able to make that declaration to me, that makes him a legend. I mean, he's a legend for other things, but just the fact that he said that and it came true during that time is just pretty incredible to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of studs on this list. Alex Mack was a phenomenal offensive lineman. And then, of course, Michael Vick, what he did at Virginia Tech and in the NFL. And yeah, Ed was about to get there.
Michael Vick was the video game player that college football needed, uh, especially at the beginning of the BCS era. He came in and he was Lightning McQueen. It was we were all in awe watching him play those 2 years at Virginia Tech because we had never seen anybody that fast be throw the ball that far with that little effort and just basically carry a team to the national title game against Florida State. It was a phenomenal experience to watch him play, and I I really think that it was the beginning of people comparing an actual player to being a video game. He was the guy.
Well, it's kind of like really quick, just not to change sports, but like the Allen Iverson in
Mhm.
NBA.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like Allen Iverson, and that's why those were two of my favorite players growing up because it was like watching a video game. Anytime those guys played, Michael Vick was just so smooth and slick and fast, and the same thing could be said with Allen Iverson. It just uh, huge talents, huge talents.
So, it's funny because going back to my comment about Strahan, that was originally just meant to be, a little side comment, but now I have to ask because it is interesting that Strahan got inducted into the Professional Hall of Fame way before he got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. And that's understandable when you win a Super Bowl and you were one of the most impactful players in defense. You're gonna get in. Obviously, we understand that the college game and professional game are different, but do you guys think that there was even just a little bit of a thought process with the voters where they were like, okay, well, if Strahan was great at the professional level, we should put him in because he was great at the college level too. That's probably not the best way to ask it, but do you get what I'm trying to get at here?
That has always been a ponderance and a question of the conversation that people think of the college football Hall of Fame ceremonies because you're talking about an organization that runs through tens of thousands of players over a few year span while these players are in college. And Michael Strahan, I believe, is the epitome of if you can play, the NFL will find you. That because playing at Texas Southern
Yeah.
University, do you even know where that is? I know where it is because I'm from the state,
I
but
know it's in South Texas.
not necessarily. Uh, it's more toward the coastline, uh, whereas South Texas is more toward like Corpus, that type of thing. But neither here nor there. It the point still stands. It is a two levels below Division One college football when he played there, and the NFL finds him, and he's a Hall of Famer at the NFL level, and owns the single season sack record. Although there is some
Tie.
pushback on that.
There's a tie with T.J. Watt. Okay, just want to put that out there. But I know what you mean, Ed. The whole Brett Favre, yeah,
Yeah,
What was hey?
fiasco.
What was that? Because I don't remember, even though it wasn't that long ago. But what was it that like that TJ Watt got the record or tied the record, but there was a BS penalty called on him?
Yeah,
no.
that's a different story, but yeah.
Michael Strahan got that single season sack record, which Mark Gastineau of the New York Jets owned for 25 years, and because it was such a BS sack that Mark Gastineau now is uh, almost came to a physical altercation with Brett Favre at a recent autograph signing
Yep.
because of that sack.
Yeah, he thinks that it was a take by Brett Favre to kind of be a dig at him. It's stupid because it was his only claim to fame was holding that sack record. He wasn't known for anything else but being lazy. So it's true, but yeah. So that was the kind of the controversy behind it. But nonetheless, Strahan does hold the record. So and Strahan was a great player on and off the field, I think, for the NFL. So that's about all we have today, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in. There was a lot to go over here, but we hope that you guys enjoyed our show, and we hope that you guys enjoy the national championship game. I know that we will. And remember, college football is not over just because the final game is over with. Please continue to hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, and comment as well. Let us know your thoughts and opinions and predictions because that national championship game is just a mere days away. But until next time, guys, we are headed for the locker room.